So there's a variety depending on where you are in the country, but the habitat regulations are what we draw down from in Europe, and here in the UK we have the Wildlife and Countryside Act, and that's been around since 1981. There's been amendments and various additions, but next year it will be 50 years since that's sort of come in, and so really there's no kind of excuses anymore. Sort of 40 years rather, there's no excuses for the amount of time that legislation's been in place and the amount of resources. We've got all that information on our website, and and we work with developers about thinking about risk and due diligence. And when you consider that things like when we're talking about risk and project risk and things like the asbestos legislation, it's not that far. It's a similar kind of area, and it's legislation that should be understood. The risk should be understood. So there's no real excuses. It's been around for a long time in various forms, and it protects bats from harm and disturbance, but it also protects their roosting sites as well. And the key thing here is it also protects their roosting sites when they're not present. So if you have a hibernation roost for the bats and they leave in the spring, that roost is still protected, because if they come back to hibernate next year and it's gone, it might mean that they have nowhere else to hibernate, or that it's not as good and they may not survive the winter. So each roosting site is a specific piece in the jigsaw puzzle really that allows bats to survive. And that's kind of trips people up as well. They think, oh well, once the bats are gone, well, we can deal with the roost, but that roost is so key and fundamental to their survival that it's protected whether the bats are present or not.
So they won't. So they're very specific about their roost. So if they find that there isn't, the roost has gone, it's been knocked down, what's happened, they will struggle to re-roost it, as it were.
They might do, yeah, because they have such specific requirements. So temperature requirements, areas that are away from lighting, areas that are away from predators. They'll have spent a long time trying to find the exact roost that is perfect for them to hibernate, perfect temperature. They want somewhere that's cool and that's humid, and that means that they can be undisturbed and safe for, say, 4 months or so. They'll be hibernating November through to sort of February, March. So they need to know that they're going to be safe and they're going to be able to survive. And flip side, for the summer, somewhere that's undisturbed for them to be able to have their young, somewhere that's really warm. So we go into the roof spaces in the summer, it's like 35, 40 degrees and it's unbearable for us. For them, it's ideal, when they give birth to their young, especially things like pipistrelles. I try to, get people to think of it. It's like a baked bean with wings, no hair, absolutely tiny, and anything less than warm, warm to hot is going to be a real issue for them. So they have these specific requirements. They might have somewhere else they can go, but it's not likely to be as good as where they are, because that's exactly the reason they're there. So it's getting people to understand that it's just like our own home. We have it exactly how we want it. It keeps us happy, it keeps us safe. It's where, choose to have our young, all of that kind of stuff. If someone was just to come along and go, oh, by the way, there might be somewhere else down the road, and then just remove that, we can see how A, unfair it would be, but B, how it would directly impact our survival and our ability to be able to do what we do. And I think it really helps people to think of bats more like people rather than like rodents, to which they're normally compared, because they're not rodents and they don't live like rodents and they're not a pest species. And once you start to see that divergence, I think it helps people to get their heads around it a little bit more.